Hello, hello, welcome to another wrap up. I've never had black nails before. It feels like I've unlocked like a new dimension of Sara. These are for my Halloween costume this year. I'm going as Gru, my best friend's going as Vector, an iconic duo if I do say so myself. I'll insert a picture if we get a good one. Or else I'm just making myself look dumb right now. Okay, let's talk about some books. Specifically, in October, I had a streak going where it was just hit after hit. Oh my gosh. This is what a normal person must feel like while reading. Someone who does not read 100 books a year and has a whole backlog of books that they compare their current read to. But we gotta wait, we'll get to those. Let's start with some analytics. In September and October, I read 15 books, of which 5 were thrillers, 4 were general fiction, 3 were fantasy. First time fantasy has ever made it in the top 3. 2 were romances, and 1 was a horror. And then I also had 1 DNF, but we'll still talk about it. I started September with Nosy Neighbors by Freya Sampson. When I first picked up this novel, I thought it was going to be like a Vera Wong cozy mystery type story where we have this older lady team up with some younger characters to solve whatever murder mystery is going on. And although there are some of those aspects, this focuses more so on the interpersonal relationships between the characters, where the mystery is just the backbone, the drive for the story. Nosy Neighbors is set in the historic apartment complex, Shelley House, home of several tenants, including its newest resident, 25-year-old Kat, and its oldest, in lease length, though probably in age 2, 77-year-old Dorothy. To describe her character, in a way my fellow chronically online individuals will understand, she is a Karen. Dorothy is the neighbor that keeps a log of any minuscule wrongdoing in the neighborhood. If you by chance glance towards her window, more than likely you will be met with a pair of piercing eyes just staring into your soul, trying to unpack the trauma you've buried deep inside you. Is that just me? And saying all that, it's pretty evident that Dorothy loves Shelley House. So when the building faces demolition and foul play is suspected, that's not going to fly with her. But that will require help from Kat, who is not really the most approachable person either. Yeah, this book predominantly follows 2 unlikable characters, but it worked. What pleasantly surprised me in here? Okay, so you know how a novel will describe a character one way, and then immediately when you start reading, the character changes their behavior, or you at least start to see the cracks in their facade, probably so that you can empathize with the characters, especially if they're more standoffish. So I expected that to be the case in here, but no, these characters are just as abrasive as the synopsis makes them out to be. There is some character growth, but it was so refreshing and honestly realistic, because 9 times out of 10, a person doesn't immediately have like a come to Jesus moment and change their ways so unexpectedly, but rather slowly over time after an accumulation of smaller things. I gave this 4.25 stars. This is my second book by Freya Sampson this year, and I've realized that she is such a great character builder of characters that are both unique, but very relatable and human. Again, I wouldn't really classify this as a cozy mystery, but it did have a very cozy reading experience. Is cozy fiction a thing? This was such a cute, wholesome story that highlights how friendship can sometimes be found in the most unexpected of places. Next up, How Can I Help You by Laura Sims. Great last name. This had one of my favorite thriller tropes where the novel predominantly takes place in a library. So honestly, my standards were not that high. Give me anything meta in a book, and it's not going to be that hard to get me to enjoy it. Well, that was the case before this novel. This thriller follows former nurse Margot, who is now a librarian in order to keep her serial killer urges in check. Margot has started a new chapter in her life, so to speak, until recent graduate Patricia? Yes, joins the library staff, and a patron's death leads her to dig into Margot's past. I don't know when the author started writing this, but I am almost certain that this was inspired by The Good Nurse, or at least the story behind The Good Nurse, because The Good Nurse was based on Charles Cullen, a serial killer that basically killed his patients. Very reminiscent. Also similar to The Good Nurse, this book highlights systemic issues within hospitals. Like, the concept in here was so interesting. Something was lost in translation. This book ended up being so disappointing. I gave it 2.5 stars. Also, if we're going to follow a serial killer character, at least give them motives. I don't want a novel that just follows 2 characters warily circling each other, trying to figure out if the other knows their secrets that don't even fundamentally have any weight to them. Luckily, this was a fairly quick read. It was only like 230 pages, so I can give it that. This next book, Confessions. Such a contrast of a reading experience. I gave this 4.25 stars. This book was chilling. The way in which this author made the story both so creepy and thrilling without sacrificing one or the other. One moment, I'd be hyper aware of my surroundings, goosebumps, line in the skin, and then the next, bam, jaw hit the floor. This is a great example of how to effectively tell a story. And saying that, I could have gone without the repeating of certain elements multiple times just from different perspectives. But ultimately, this author knows how to write an impactful story. Confession starts off on this teacher's last day of teaching during her final lecture, in which she admits to knowing which of her students killed her daughter. While she does not reveal who killed her daughter exactly, her insinuations set up a promise of revenge. And oh boy, did she get that revenge. Not in my wildest dreams did I expect this book to go where it went. Throughout the novel, we follow 6 different perspectives, all of whom twists events slightly in their favor while introducing the narrative with new facts, leaving you a lot to psychoanalyze. I really enjoyed the motif of motherhood in here and how Minato juxtaposed different mothers, emphasizing the variety in motherhood. Specifically, I'm talking about the teacher in here and then the mother of 2 other students. A great book club book. I really enjoyed this and will be thinking about it for the foreseeable future. We have now reached my DNF, which was also, unfortunately, the book I had planned to read for the Buzzword Readathon prompt of to read a book with senses in the title. I didn't have any other books that would work for that prompt, so I was really counting on this to pull through. It did not. When You See Me by Lisa Gardner. I gave it about 75 pages, and then I was like, why am I subjecting myself to this? I'm clearly not enjoying my time, and I have a backlog of other thrillers that I'm certain would be much more enjoyable than this. If I believed that this could have offered me anything else, then maybe I would have stuck with it. But I don't know about you. I'll pick up a thriller for entertainment. Not, I could care less if this got lost in a house fire meant. Not me, Fahrenheit 451ing out here. Look, don't burn books. Actually, yeah, no. I could see where this book was heading, and yeah, although there probably would have been twists and turns along the way, I didn't care. Unless one of you can attest to the fact that this book will blow my mind, you will really have to have enjoyed it though. Then I will be rehoming this. So this book, Bloody Heart, I keep on a floating shelf. There's dust on it. It hasn't even been up there that long. What have I been doing? I need to preface this book, this whole series really, by saying it's a dark romance. To emphasize that point, this book literally starts off with our male MC, Mafasio Dante Gallo, stealing a limousine with our female MC, Simone, in the back. Granted, Dante didn't know Simone was back there, but nevertheless, kind of an immediate red flag. What does this guy think he's in, like, Grand Theft Auto? However, the story as a whole, very entertaining. I gave it 4 stars. Why not higher? Well, sit down. A specific line in here, electric chair, those words should never have appeared in this novel. They should never have been a written word. Also, this book uses a specific trope that I know a lot of people dislike. Personally, I could take it or leave it, but then it took it to a whole new level. No, planet near the very end. And it was just unnecessary. But I mean, it was kind of funny as well in a ridiculous way. But the series, it's like crack. That's the best way to describe it. And like crack, it's not perfect, but I read an installment and I'm addicted. I pick up the next installment and I'm just as satisfied. Sure, it's kind of same but different, but it gives me that hit. Whenever I'm in need of a for sure good time, the series will provide. Next, I picked up Cassandra in Reverse by Holly Smale. September was the month of ruining some of my favorite book tropes. This book plays with the Groundhog's Day concept, not very well, and time travel. After a particularly terrible day of being dumped, fired, and not getting her daily banana muffin at the local cafe, understandable, I'd be upset too. Our protagonist Cassandra learns that she can jump back in time and change the past. How did she suddenly acquire this ability? Beats me. That's magical realism, my friends. I gave this 3 stars. To use a word that this novel uses 1,000 times, everything just felt arbitrary. The whole plot, arbitrary. Cassandra's sense of agency is so inconsistent and random. Also, I am not hyperbolizing in the slightest when I say this. I think there's a ladybug over there as well. There are at least 2 Greek mythology references per chapter, so every, say, 10 or so pages, Zeus or Athena or some other Greek deity is referenced. Kind of impressive, must say. I did take a Greek mythology course. I definitely would not say I'm an expert or anything, but if I had no Greek mythology knowledge, I would be confused at least twice a chapter. Now this is where it gets interesting. Basically, to give some quick context, in Greek mythology, Trojan princess Cassandra was given the gift of prophecy by the god Apollo in exchange for her love, but being the strong, independent woman she is, Cassandra was like, nah. Obviously, Apollo's masculinity was wounded, and so he cursed Cassandra so that no one would believe her prophecies. Vindictive much, my dude. Back to this Cassandra. This Cassandra was named after the Trojan princess Cassandra because she is a prophet in her own way, as she can foretell future events when she jumps back in time. Okay, so this is getting into light spoilers, but I promise you it's not a spoiler at all, just from how obvious it is, but I will pop up spoiler on the screen. Skip ahead if you want, but I really don't think you need to. So I'm not exactly sure how I feel about the neurodivergent representation in here. I can only offer my perspective as someone who is not neurodivergent, so feel free to correct me, but I feel like it was used for sensationalism. It was meant to be this plot twist that Cassandra was on the spectrum, which I promise is not a spoiler, as Cassandra exhibits typical behaviors of a neurodivergent individual. I think Holly Smale was trying to represent later in life discovery, which is great and all, and is something that is not represented much in fiction, but after the reveal, the author just brushes over it, offering no further insights. It just did not sit exactly right with me. I get what she was trying to do, but I just don't think she executed it the best. But it was interesting to read about how Cassandra perceives other individuals through colors. I'd be interested to learn if other people did that, or if that's just something, I don't know, Holly Smale made up. I was invested throughout, even if the ending left me mad. What was the point of this book? Just for you to do that. Overall, a very middle of the road 3-star read. Moving on to Sometimes I Lie by Alice Feeney. I picked up this book before filming, and I was like, I remember nothing about this. Basic premise? Can't recall. I did give this 4 stars, so apparently I did enjoy it. Granted, I wasn't that present while reading this novel, just due to some other stuff going on in my personal life, but I did see some research on the web to refresh my brain and reconfigure all the events in the right chronological order, which was actually harder said than done. 1, because there are multiple twists in here, and 2, because this novel has a dual timelines narrative, which I did really enjoy. Alongside the present POV, the past is told in a diary entry format. The novel literally opens with our protagonist telling you that she is an unreliable narrator. She goes, "My name is Amber Reynolds. There are 3 things you should know about me. 1, I'm in a coma. 2, my husband doesn't love me anymore. And 3, sometimes I lie." We then see Amber wake up in a hospital bed. She is conscious but unable to move and speak. She's in a coma. Amber can, however, hear everyone around her, and so then over the book, as she comes in and out of consciousness, we piece together alongside her what exactly happened leading up to the incident that landed her in the hospital. Online, it seems like a lot of people are confused by the ending. It's definitely up to interpretation, but I liked it. Is it wrong for me to arguably root for the villain? Quite possibly. But after everything that happened, it felt maybe not justified, but satisfying to read as a reader. So eloquent, Sara. What Alice Feeney was portraying with these characters is how one can be both victim and villain, which I thought came across very well. Although it's questionable that this had much of a lasting impression on me. The chapters were short, engaging, and it was an all-around fun distraction from life. And sometimes that's what you need. Next, I picked up My Lovely Wife by Samantha Downing, which I had been so excited to read ever since I bought it, really. I don't know why I thought this followed a lesbian couple committing murder in their suburban neighborhood, but I was excited, to read about female rage and femininity. No, we just follow a husband and wife committing murder in their suburban neighborhood. So, still very entertaining. As a suburban girl myself, did I just turn southern there? What? I know firsthand of the suburban mundanity of which this book speaks. So to counter that and liven up their relationship, our couple in here commits murder. A totally rational solution when marital issues arise. Again, I don't know where my initial assumption of this book came from, but I was definitely not expecting it to be told solely from a male's POV, a man who obviously has issues, but you also empathize with. Samantha Downing does morally gray in this book really well, because on one hand, this guy is exhibiting serial killer behavior, but then on the other, he's also a caring father. Not that serial killers can't be caring fathers, but he's a very confusing individual. In contrast, the wife, I absolutely despised. She was just downright terrible, no redeeming factors. I did wish her character had more likable characteristics, because to me, it felt like the easy way out by painting her as the villain, despite both of them being horrible people. But I think the novel would have been more interesting if she was also morally gray. I love the shades of gray, not 50 Shades of Grey. No. Okay, now we're getting into my banger after banger era. The first one being Half a Soul by Olivia Atwater, which I gave 4.75 stars to. If you don't believe the hype around this book, let me tell you, I was right there with you. I am a skeptic when it comes to fantasy, but this was... It was so good. This novel is a Regency era fantasy with a bit of satire mixed in as well. We follow Miss Theodora Eddings, who, you guessed it, has half a soul, due to a curse bestowed on her when she was a wee little thing. The only person who may be able to cure her is, unfortunately, the least likable man in all of high society, Lord Sorcerer Elias Wilder. But the more Theodora is drawn into his dangerous affairs, the more she begins to suspect that one can fall in love even with half a soul. The Regency era vibes in here, phenomenal. There were multiple balls, high society dinners, and all of that was perfectly mixed in with the fantasy and romance to create this story about this girl who never felt like she was quite enough. Theodora was such an iconic character. The way in which her wit came across in the most deadpan of ways, while also just her being totally serious. I loved it. She also had such a big heart and saw things as they were without any emotional or societal judgment, probably because she only had half a soul, but it was very admirable. Compared to the rest of the book, the ending felt rushed, but needless to say, I was enchanted by this novel. I want to get the other books in the series so bad. I'm going to hold off, at least until the next time I go to Barnes, then all promises are off. Actually, I need to pick this back up. So this kind of feels a bit like cheating. In the back of the book, there is a short story. Here it is. That is book point 5 in the Regency Fairy Tales series. That's fairy with a I-E, fairy. On Goodreads, the short story you can log, so I'm counting it as a book. That is The Lord Sorcerer. Basically, the short story is the prequel to Half a Soul and follows Albert, a side character in this book, during his time on the battlefield where he met and befriends Elias. Haven't been saying his name wrong. Embarrassing. Lord Sorcerer, let's call him. The male love interest in here. I thought it was okay. I gave it 3.5 stars. It felt like historical context that we didn't really need. It was mildly entertaining. I enjoyed reading from Albert as he is such a sweet character and seeing how the Lord Sorcerer got his title in the first place. But I think there's a reason why that information was cut in the actual book. It wasn't really needed. It was kind of boring. Moving on. The Collective by Allison Galen. What in the Batter Me Not phenomenon is going on this month? What are the chances that I read 2 books practically back to back where Greek mythology plays a significant role? At least this one didn't have a reference every other page, but still, it was a significant plot point. The Collective has been on my TBR for a couple of years now. I tried to read it last year, read the first page, and was like, actually, I'm good. What a missed opportunity on my part, because this was great. I gave it 4.5 stars. In this novel, 5 years after her daughter's death, our MC Camille is understandably still grieving her loss. She wants nothing more than her daughter's murder to pay, leading her to fall subject to the Collective, an underboard group of grieving and vengeful mothers who take matters like Camille's into their own hands. Again, I love a book, especially a thriller that makes you think. This book poses the moral dilemma of if these people are carrying out vigilante justice or if they themselves have become the very people they have pledged to hate. It did take a hot minute for the book to get going, so the tension didn't really hit until later on. Also, another ending that is a bit divisive. I loved it again. I read a lot of books where everything is tied up in a nice, neat bow at the end, so it's refreshing when every once in a while it's not. However, it can be tricky to toe the line between doing that and still ensuring that the reader feels satisfied at the end, but I thought this book pulled it off. This is how we write a compelling read that brings the commentary to the table as well. Is this my first 5-star of the video? Once Upon a Broken Heart. I loved so much. It wasn't really until after I finished reading this book, when I was thinking back on it, that I realized why I probably loved it so much. This gave Cinderella, but better vibes. And if you know me, I love a fairy tale-esque book. In this novel, we follow Evelyn Fox after she learns that the person she believed to be the love of her life is betrothed to someone else. Heartbroken by this discovery, she strikes up a deal with the Prince of Hearts. Now, bargaining with a god is a dangerous game, and in exchange for his assistance, she must now give 3 kisses at the time, place, and recipient of his choosing. My only criticism of this book is that in the beginning, when we're introduced to the male love interest, he calls our female MC Pet. That is like one of the most demeaning names you can call a woman. Though I can also see the argument that that language aligns with his character in the beginning, as he's presented as this very arrogant. He's not a person, he's a god. He's presented as this very arrogant, omniscient god. If he called her pet throughout the whole book, I could not in good faith give this 5 stars. I wouldn't even blame you if you knocked this down just for him using that name in the beginning. I am choosing to ignore that incident though, because the rest of this book. If my heart was a caterpillar, this book metamorphosized it into a butterfly. Even when I knew there was this impending doom for our MC, I still had this underlying sense of hope that everything would turn out all right, which I can't ever recall experiencing in a novel before. Well, to this extent, like bestie, even though I know this is not going to turn out good for you, I'm still out here. I'm still out here rooting for you. From the lava pit in which the Prince of Hearts started out in, he really crawled out and redeemed himself by the end. But Apollo, though, I need to be vague here. Okay, we did not learn much about his true self, and what we did know about him maybe did not paint him in the best light, but I still think he's kind of fine. However, that opinion is subject to change. I love this so much. I cannot wait to get my hands on the rest of the series and then display them on my shelves. Now we're getting into the more Halloween, spooky type books. I think my neck just cracked there. Sarah, you actually cannot move anymore because apparently your skeleton cannot take that. Well, that's news to me. Cackle by Rachel Harrison. I heard mixed reviews about, so my expectations were low, especially since all I really knew about this was that it followed this woman after going through a breakup where she moves to the small town and befriends someone who may or may not be a witch. But this was such a pleasant surprise. I ended up giving this 4.5 stars. I did not expect this to be such a cozy reading experience. Unless you have arachnophobia, then run. I loved the theme of female friendship, even though Sophie, who our female MC befriends, was not my favorite character. Look, I thought she was kind of controlling, but hey, I have my red flags too. Needs at least 2 coffees a day.
It's mental illness, isn't it?
I can see how our MC could come across as annoying to some, as throughout most of the book, she's kind of wallowing. But to me, I thought her character was realistic. I would be in the feels too if my life and what I thought was my safety net for the past 10 years was thrown overboard. As for anthropomorphic side characters go, I'm sorry, but I cannot get behind a spider. Why couldn't Ralph have been, I don't know, a raven? That's witchy. But I guess his character heightened the horror element in here. On that note, it's hard to categorize this book into just one genre because it combines elements of a horror, comedy, paranormal fiction, but all in a cozy way. Overall, I enjoyed this a lot and definitely will be picking up more from this author in the future. Okay, this next book was also so good. The Mary Shelley Club by Goldie Modolfsky. I gave 5 stars. This was a blast because in a way, it felt like we were following the villains. Hear me out. In this drama-filled YA horror, we follow Rachel, the newest member of the Mary Shelley Club, a club that exacts revenge by pulling pranks. Oh, sorry, not pranks. They prefer to call them fear tests to see how fear manifests, how it triggers the fight or flight response. However, when the club becomes a target themselves, Rachel starts to question if their club is compromised or if someone from her past is out to get her. I loved how throughout the novel we also get the POVs from the recipients of the fear tests. Their chapters started off like, la-di-da, everything's fine. And then by the end, not so much. Not after the Mary Shelley Club entered the scene. It was kind of ironic that these rich, spoiled kids started such a gruesome club. Like, you have the resources to do anything you want, go anywhere you want, and this is what you choose to do in your free time. Terrorize your classmates. Okay. This novel is very self-aware. Some could even say campy. It pulls on those classic horror tropes and uses them in a creative way. There are also numerous references to different horror movies. I'm not that well versed in the genre, but I caught on to a few just from knowing the basic premise of them. If you are a horror fanatic, this is a must-read. The club is literally called the Mary Shelley Club. Mary Shelley, author of Frankenstein. A Kiss Curse by Erin Sterling, the second book after The Ex-Hex that follows Gwen's cousin and her love story with the guy that just opened up a shop across the street. Witchy shop, apothecary, tourist attraction. The book does not specify what it is. I didn't love this one as much as The Ex-Hex, but that could have just been because I wasn't really in the mood for a rom-com, but I didn't want to put this off another year. I gave this 3.5 stars. I believe I gave The Ex-Hex 4.5. I did enjoy how in both books we had this underlying mystery going on. I would have preferred that to be a bigger element in here. I thought the romance was cute, but for this being an enemies to lovers, the tension was lacking. There wasn't any build up to the eventual romance. It was just, yeah, we hate each other, but oh, we kind of think the other's hot. And then, oh, whoops, we accidentally kissed. I guess we're in love now. I especially loved how our MC mentored these younger witches. She called them her baby witches. Yes, very cheesy name, but it was very wholesome. I saw that there's a third book in the series now, Justice for Bowen. I'm glad that he gets a happily ever after too, though I can't say I'm in a big rush to pick it up. Finally, let's talk about Night Bitch by Rachel Yoder, which is definitely one of the weirdest books I've read this year. Not the weirdest book, but it's up there. What is this book about? Well, we have a mom who starts sprouting hair in places that should not have hair. A nub is forming at the base of her spine. Her canines are lengthening. Yeah, she's turning into a dog. And so over the novel, we follow her transformation, where she is finally embracing her more animalistic side and the rage associated with motherhood. Think the yellow wallpaper, but replace the wallpaper with motherhood and the protagonist's deteriorating mental state with turning into a canine. I gave this 2.5 stars. I don't regret reading it. Rachel Yoder certainly has a lot to say about motherhood, such as the pressures and expectations mothers endure, and the stress and feelings of helplessness that come with caring for a young child, etc. But for me, at least, in my subjective opinion, this would have been a more impactful short story. It's just under 250 pages, but I could have used at least 100 pages less. I felt like a nail, and this was a hammer that kept banging me over the head with the rhetoric. The drawn-out feeling was further emphasized by the lack of chapters. There's also no quotation marks, which I didn't actually realize until like 2/3 of the way through. So I don't really care about that, but I know that annoys some people, so I thought I'd mention it. If you want a unique read, this is not something I would personally recommend, but hey, if convolution is your thing, here you go. Those were the 15 books I read in September and October. Time to go binge read some books to catch up on my end of the year reading goal. As always in these videos, I'd love to hear any books you've been reading recently down below. Also, what are your thoughts on any of the novels I talked about today? If you enjoyed this video, make sure you give it a thumbs up. It really does help me. My channel out a lot. You can also comment, interact, subscribe, all that fun YouTube stuff. I'd really appreciate it. I hope you all are having a fantastic day, a fantastic week, and I will see you in the next one. Bye.